Hello, everyone. We are Group 9. My name is Caleb, and I will be presenting with my group members Rahul, Anhad, and Allison. Today, we'll be discussing the data set we picked on mortgage borrowers defaulting on debt, and we will dive into the best evidence-based approach for lenders to avoid these likely default borrowers. We will first be discussing the problem. Then we will dive into the data set we chose and the two classification methods we consider to deal with the problem. Then we'll go into detail about which method worked the best and what we would recommend for lenders in regards to who they should be lending to. Let's get started with the problem. Credit is very important to the average consumer in order to purchase homes, cars, and other goods. There is an inherent risk to lenders if they are not careful around selecting borrowers who do not make their payments. For our project, we decided to primarily focus on mortgage loans, given the fact that it represents the largest outstanding debt in the US. A perfect case for our problem is the recession in 2008. Lenders tried to make home loans more affordable and accessible in 1999. They did this by issuing an unprecedented number of subprime mortgages in the market. Subprime mortgages are mortgages targeted at borrowers with poor credit scores and low savings. By 2007, the market began to decline because of the low credit borrowers' inability to pay back their loans at record numbers. This led to a crippling decrease in revenue for America's largest lenders and caused turmoil in the stock market. A great movie that details the many factors that led to the collapse is The Big Short, if you want more context on the issue. Our group plans on tackling this issue by using an analytical tool to help lenders know what characteristics borrowers have that are likely to default.
Here's a summary of the quantitative variables that we had in our data set. This includes the mean, standard deviation, minimum, and maximum of these variables, just for us to get an idea of how the variables are and what range they exist in. And the variables are about financial information on the mortgage properties themselves, and as well as the individuals who took on those mortgages. Along with this, we also had information on the interest rates during those instances, and as well as a spread of how they moved. Moving on to the EDA helped us identify a lot of characteristics from these variables. A few of the interesting things we learned was that the income had the highest number of outliers. We didn't, which makes sense since of the income disparity. And the rate of interest and the interest rate spread had a positive correlation with each other, which was relatively strong. And along with this, the interest rate also was normally distributed, as you can see by the plots shown above. We then cleaned the data by removing the data that we felt wasn't needed or came in the way of our analysis or like hindered any of our progress in any way.
So we decided to run a logistical regression model on the data to find out the most significant variables. The model had an accuracy of 84.5%, and it would predict default when there is no default in less than 1% of all situations. Whereas it would not predict default when there was the default in about 15% of all situations. Some key observations were people at the younger ages had far greater impact than the others. Males had a greater impact than females. Co-applicant and loan type had a significant impact. Geographical location needs to be looked at, as the income and property value can vary depending on the region selected. Since there were 27 variables in the data, some variables would appear insignificant. The logistical regression model would be more effective after removing a few of those insignificant variables. Deviance residual is roughly symmetrical, although the max was high. Now, then we use the classification tree to find out the most important variable. The model had an accuracy of about 84.1%, and it had about 0.6% type 1 error and about 0.15% type 2 error. Based on the model, lump sum payment appeared to be the most important variable. Now I would pass it on to Allison, who will talk about the best method.
So we chose logistic regression as the best method because it had the highest accuracy of 84.5, but it was only slightly higher than the classification tree. We also focused on these two methods because they showed us the significant variables, and in the future they could focus just on collecting the information for those variables and create a new model with those if they wanted to narrow down the amount of information collected. So our recommendation is that lenders use the logistical regression model to predict if potential borrowers are likely to default and only lend to the ones who are not likely to default. This will allow them to continue lending money and not get in a situation where they have to shut down and cause problems in the economy.
Thank you for listening to our presentation. Please let us know if you have any questions.